The popularity of n8n is literally exploding, and in this video I'll explain what n8n is and how to get up and running in simple terms so you can automate literally anything in your business, or to sell these automations to other businesses yourself. At its core, n8n is a workflow automation tool, but what does that mean? In any knowledge work, you're typically hopping around between different tools. You might be in Google Sheets the one moment and in Gmail in the next. You might be in ChatGPT in one moment and in your project management software like Asana, Monday.com, or ClickUp the next. Now what if you do the same work every day and you want to transfer data in between these two tools to do it? Well, one option is to simply copy and paste. Literally in your browser, copy the data that you want to go from one tool to the other. But we are AI automation experts, so we're not going to do that. And if we want computers to do the heavy lifting for us, we can use what's called an API. An API is just a fancy term for how to get these two tools to talk using code. They also change a lot, so you need to maintain your code on top of that. And that's where n8n comes into play. It lets you connect these two tools in an automated way, so no humans need to be involved after the initial setup, and it's much easier than writing code, working with APIs, and it's just a drag and drop interface. So check out all the tools on the screen. n8n lets you connect without ever writing a line of code. There's Slack, Discord, ChatGPT, Pinecone, MailChimp, different types of databases. And I want you to get excited because this means our possibilities are effectively endless, and you can automate almost anything in your business with this tool. But wait, there's more. As if n8n didn't already make it easy enough, there's a huge library of templates you can use to get up and running immediately. Here's one that lets you build your first AI agent. Literally all you need to do is say use for free, get started for free with n8n Cloud, and the entire thing gets imported into your workspace immediately. All you gotta do is enter your credentials, which just means you need to log into stuff. And the automations can get absolutely insane and complex, so the sky is really the limit here. Your imagination is the limit to what you can build in n8n. But before you log in and get started making your first automation, there are two ways you can set up n8n. The first way to set up n8n is to self-host it, and all that means is running it on your computer or on a server, so you stay in control of everything. This means n8n won't see any data you pass from tool to tool, and it means you won't need to pay n8n a monthly fee once you start building a ton of automations. This is all due to the fact that n8n is open source, which is another big reason behind the hype. Open source just means the code is for anyone to view and use online. So the second setup option is what's called the cloud hosted version. And all cloud hosting means is instead of us setting it up on our computer or server, we're asking n8n to host or set it up for us. If anything goes wrong or there's an update, n8n handles it. So this is what I would recommend you start off with and what I'll be showing in this video. So let's set up an account and make our first workflow in n8n Cloud. Go ahead and search for n8n and go to n8n.io, then sign in on the top right. And it's very explicit here, we're signing in to n8n Cloud. If you're new, you can start a free trial and enter your information. So once you're in the actual n8n Cloud itself, you see I'm in app.n8n.cloud. You can see the project we just created and you can open the instance. If we expand our sidebar here, we have different organizations. So this is my personal space. There is my Scaling Sidekick project. So it's like stuff that I have associated with this particular project in mind. You can also create folders in here to organize everything. Admin panel brings you back to this page. Templates brings you to stuff that's pre-built for you. You can also view all templates here, which brings you to this page. You can sort by different use cases. So whether you are looking for stuff in AI, sales, IT ops, marketing, etc. And again, you can just go in and clone any of these at any time, and they'll show up as workflows in your space. Variables let you set variables across workflows. So instead of the data I'm processing only be restricted to this workflow or to this workflow or to this one, we can use variables to share data across them. But you need to upgrade to the pro plan for that. Got some analytics here, but for now we're just going to create a new workflow. Hide my sidebar and zoom in a bit here. Here we are ready to add our trigger to the flow. So what's going to start this thing off? So let's think about what we want this thing to do as a whole. That will help inform our decision of what we want the trigger to be. So let's say once a day we want to find some trends, something trending related to AI, and store that in a Google Sheet. Well, if you notice, what I said there is once a day. So let's see if there's a trigger that lets us start this flow on a schedule. And in fact, there is. So let's click on a schedule. And when we click execute step here, you'll see we get an output on the right-hand side. And stick with me here because I know I said low code, but check out how easily readable this is. The timestamp, it's today's date and time. Readable date, it's the date and time in a different format. The readable time only, the day of the week, the year, the month, even the time zone. So okay, we have some data here. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because we can actually use this data in the rest of our n8n flow throughout the entire thing. And n8n gives us 3 ways to visualize the same data. So the first one I showed you is JSON. It's just a easily readable kind of code format. You can also choose a table, right? It's the same exact information, just shown in a different way. Or typically what I prefer is schema. So again, same data, just in a slightly different format. Cool. So we have data in our flow now. So let's go back and you can see it's returned 1 item. That's that one output that we just showed. And if we go back to our end goal again, well, we wanted to find trends. So how can we do that? Well, one way of doing that is to pull data from an RSS feed. An RSS feed is nothing more than a URL like you see up here, but instead of returning a web page, it just returns a bunch of data for us to use further in our n8n flow. So let's hit the add node button, search for RSS. We can either choose to trigger our flow based on when there's a new RSS feed entry, or we can say, let's read an existing RSS feed. So after we've added the RSS read step to our flow, we are greeted with this page with 3 sections. We've got the input section, which is just saying you have this data from earlier in the flow that you can use here if you want. The middle is we're actually configuring the RSS read step. And on the right side is the output. So after we read an RSS feed, we should get some output in here that we can then use later in our flow. So for URL, I just found this machine learning RSS feed and we can execute step. And we've got some data as a result. You can see the creator of this article or feed item, the title, the link to it, the date it was published, the content itself. Sometimes RSS feeds give you like multiple paragraphs, but that's sort of what I was hoping for, but we'll just run with this small example. Okay, beautiful. Now that we have this output, we can use this later in our flow, right? Here are the 10 items that this RSS read step is outputting. Now let's do something fun. Let's process this data with AI and kind of get some insight that is personalized and related to us. So we'll hit the plus sign for OpenAI. We go to message a model. And now you guys are experts. You already know what these 3 things mean, right? Here's the input to our previous steps. We have our schedule trigger step. We can pull the date and time that we triggered this. Also the RSS read step, we should still have our content there. So let's think how we can use this data to create some sort of personalized trend insight for us that we'll store in Google Sheets in the next step. So in the middle, we're gonna configure our OpenAI step to message a model. If it's your first time connecting to OpenAI, you need to set up a new credential. And here it's asking for an API key. It's the only thing that's required. So an API is just a way for n8n and OpenAI to talk. The API key is essentially the password n8n needs to use your OpenAI account, because chat completions from OpenAI or ChatGPT are not free. It costs them money to run the AI to generate your responses. So it's just saying, hey, give us the key so that we can run all of the requests to AI through your OpenAI account. So how do you get an OpenAI API key? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You go to platform.openai.com/API-keys. You might need to do some verification or enter your billing information, but once you've done that, you can create a new secret key. You want to name it something that indicates what you're using it for. In my case, I'm going to name it best n8n YouTube video ever, delete this later. So when we create the secret key, this is something you want to be careful about, is you never want to share this key with anyone. Just by me sharing it on this video, other people can take that key and use it for their projects and therefore run up my OpenAI bill. So I always want to be protective of your API key. I've hopefully put enough bold text there to remind me. Copy that key before you close it out like I just did, and you simply paste it back into n8n and hit save. Now we can also rename all of our credentials and nodes and whatnot. So I'm gonna rename this one delete later, LOL. Let's hit save to save this credential. Again, it's just, we see connection is tested successfully. It's saved, we can hit X. Again, if you're getting overwhelmed by any of this stuff, just take a moment and read through everything one by one. We're messaging a model. We're setting the parameters. We've set the credentials or our login information, our API key. We want a text response. We want to message a model. We can select which OpenAI model we want to use from a list. Let's choose GPT-5 Mini. It'll give us some quicker responses once we move this thing out to production. Maybe we want to upgrade it to GPT-5, but for the time being, let's just do a faster model. And in the prompt here, I'm trying to think of how we generate the super personalized statement from the inputs that we have available to us. Our prompt is write an insightful comment about how this AI news on this date could impact my mid-sized SaaS company. But n8n doesn't know which data you want to use by default, so you have to drag it in to the prompt section. First, I'll put the date here. Let's do the readable date, puts it at the bottom, and then let's pull in the content, like so, just by dragging and dropping it. Now we're all set to feed AI our custom prompt, some information about our company, and the data from earlier in our flow. We can leave everything else the same here and hit execute step. And bam, ChatGPT replies with a output. I guess I should have specified which length I want this because it's a pretty long response. Another cool thing about n8n is if we go back here to a step we've already completed, maybe this took a long time to complete, and we don't want to run this every time and run up our API costs, we can right click and pin this node, and it keeps that data in there for testing purposes. We can come back, execute the workflow as a whole to test it out, or we can execute steps starting in the middle. But now that we have this data in our flow, we can move on to the last step, which is adding it to Google Sheets. So we can store it somewhere. It's not doing anyone any good out in n8n cloud land. So let's add our fourth and final node to our workflow, which is going to be Google Sheets. Let's have this flow append or add a row to our sheet. Again, we're greeted with the input, the node parameters, and the output. See, now we got our OpenAI response in here. But if this is your first time setting up Google Sheets, you have to add a new credential, which is again, just you logging in. So this time you don't need to get that API key, you can just log in with Google. So once you've done that, hop over to docs.google.com, create a blank spreadsheet, rename it something that is indicative of what it is. So this is going to be our big brain AI powered trend detector. And in column A, we'll just say trend. That's the header for our column. So everything under it will each be a trend. So as long as I've selected the Google account that I've created the sheet under, I should be able to find it here in the documents. So there is my big brain AI powered trend detector. It's asking which sheet it wants to look from. So we'll say sheet 1. Sheets are simply the tabs on the bottom of Excel sheets. So I'm getting this error, no columns found in Google Sheets. I think it's because I was like typing in here and I didn't like click out of it. So once I clicked out of it, it solidified that this trend is a column and it picks that up here. So it says, what are the values you want to send to the trend column? Well, let's pull in our AI generated content, just like that, drag and drop. Everything else is good. Let's execute the step. So we get node executed successfully. Let's check our trend detector sheet and holy crap, it looks like we're getting a really big response here. So this step is completed, but hold on. When I go to my Excel sheet, I see it's appended 10 different things to this Excel sheet. And since this is likely the kind of stuff you guys are going to run into, I'm going to show you how to troubleshoot this. So, okay, we wanted one row of data. We were expecting one row of data and we got 10. So that means somewhere in our n8n flow, we're passing, 10 items, both from the RSS feed into OpenAI and from OpenAI into the Google Sheet. And it's logged those 10 items. So let's check on the source, right? The root cause of the issue. Looks like it's in the RSS feed step. It's sending 10 items over to the OpenAI model. And look at that. Well, it does look like we just have one item here in the schema view. When we go to JSON, we actually see there's 10 different entries. It pulled 10 different RSS feeds, each of a different topic. So is this the cause of our issue? The 10th one says something about random forests and gradient boosting. And there you have it in our 10th entry, which is our 11th row, right? Because we have that top row that just says trend. So in our 10th entry, we see that snippet about random forests and gradient boosting. Okay, so what does that mean for us? What step do we have to add in here to fix this? Well, I don't want to send all 10 of those messages to OpenAI. I just want to send maybe the first one. Now, if we only want to take the first item from this RSS feed instead of the 10 items, we can add a step. We can do this a variety of ways, but we're just going to use the limit node, restrict the number of items. We're gonna say restrict it to only the first item and hit execute step. Now we only have one output. And if we go back to our flow, we indeed see the one item is being passed now. Now we need to edit the OpenAI node, so we'll unpin it. We can get rid of what we tried to embed in here before and simply take the content from our new limit item. It's in green, so it means it's good to go. Let's execute the step. Node executed. Let me actually clear our Excel sheet first from all our old responses so we don't get mixed up. Delete the rows. We're with the fresh sheet. Let's execute the step. So that worked. We can, pin that again so we don't have to keep hitting the OpenAI API when we're testing this. We do see that one item has now been passed to Google Sheets, so if we execute this, now we should see, there you go, just one trend saved to our Google Sheet. So let's unpin everything, right, and get some fresh data, see how this thing works from beginning to end. We can execute the workflow. Once a day, it will pull the 10 items from the RSS feed, limit it to the first one. It'll ask OpenAI to give us a chat completion and store that in our Google Sheet. So now we have an AI-powered trend detector at our fingertips. We can build upon this more. We can add new nodes for any other tools we use. We can tweak this. Maybe we want to use a different model like Claude or Perplexity. This is just to demonstrate, hey, we've successfully integrated an RSS feed, a AI response, and Google Sheets all in one flow. And remember to save your work. So what are you waiting for? Get into n8n, start with some pre-built workflows like this one. Learn n8n basics in 3 easy steps, or just start from scratch. So that's it for today's video. If I was able to help you out, please like the video and subscribe so you don't miss any of my future uploads. I'm going to be making a lot more videos on low-code automation tools like n8n. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.